Good evening. Call the work session to order, please. May I get a roll call?
Roll call, Gonzalez. Here. Groneman.
Here.
Haley. It appears he's not online, correct? Mylan.
Here.
Mulvaney Henry.
Here.
Bryant.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Can I get a motion for approval of tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Gonzalez. Here. Yes. Groneman.
Yes.
Haley.
He is joining now. And moving through. He won't know what you were
No, he won't.
Yeah, just go
Go ahead. Mylan.
Here.
Mulvaney Henry.
Aye.
Bryant.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Thank you.
Aye.
Yep.
Mr. General Manager, it looks like, we need to get maybe an update from you, and if there's any other board members that have any other updates.
We're gonna cover.
I mean, I've got one to cover if you want.
Okay, I'll just say that
Go
the
ahead.
Public Works and Safety met Monday,
Mhm.
and there was nothing basically on the agenda that affected us.
Okay. Senator Haley, do you have anything to report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And again, I apologize, I'm remote. We've just finished here at the peak about 10 minutes ago, so I wasn't able to get on the road in time. We did meet the Economic Development and Finance Committee, did meet. I think it was pretty uneventful. There was one issue regarding the AstroTurf of the field, Legends Field, and they kind of brought it before the committee at the last minute on a narrow vote request for the 1.2 million was denied. There are some events, ancillary events that the Legends or the Monarchs field has, but they are going to bring it back before us. My question was how it might affect or disaffect the utility. Services for for the field, the grass field, which is there now. So that was essentially the only thing that came up. It will be coming back. I did not support it because it was again a $1.2 million ask that had not been reviewed. So that's really pretty much all that I have to report. Thank you.
Okay, and David, you cut out there for a little bit, but I just want to clarify. So the Monarchs ownership came in and asked Unified Government for $1.2 million to replace their grass field with turf. Is that what the ask was?
That's correct. And it kind of was sprung on us. I mean, no one knew about it ahead of time. And that's correct, Madam Chair. Are you hearing me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, all right. And it was kind of a surprise. They did outline how many other events they have scheduled beyond Monarchs games, which of course generate revenue beyond, baseball, the interest in baseball, and that these events are already planned, that they're already up and running, and that the AstroTurf, well, be so much better for other events that they have planned. And it was argued that it would be more beneficial. And I think all that we were asking for, all that those of us who were concerned about it wanted was just a little advance notice. They went through an extensive review of how much it costs to even including others like Chicago. Chicago's field, it takes $200,000 to fix the grass after a heavy thing. There are several events coming up at Legends Field, other that are at Legends Field as well. So yeah, Also, I should mention, they also had something about the biosolids project that was on our agenda as well. I meant to mention that. I was trying to find those notes. They did talk about that. And that, what was his name? Jeff, I believe Fisher with Public Works gave a pretty good review of how the biosolids would affect or disaffect us. But I have to give that review at some point subsequent. I don't have my notes in front of me.
Thank you, Senator. Bill, do you know anything about that biosolids project?
It was sketchy.
So he indicated that at this meeting, Jeff Fisher from Public Works had given a presentation on some biosolids project.
Familiar with that one.
Okay,
Maybe, since I didn't hear it, I can't say yay or yes or no.
David, was there a deck from Jeff Fisher's presentation?
There was, they had some of the lineup. Actually, I was on regrettably on that by Zoom as well. So I did not get all of that, the presentation. They went through it at length though, and I did get most of it. Actually going back and looking at the some of the notes that were taken or that were recorded during that the archived from the meeting that was available. And that was kind of what I drew a lot of the information from. But it's pretty interesting. And I do think here in retrospect, it would be advantageous for me to go back and review or for whomever can to go back and review and to look at the presentation because it might be dispositive to what we do here at the utility.
So I think I know what he's talking about. There's it has been talking about doing a project down at the wastewater facility down in the bottoms. And they were asked us if we would participate, if they would take some of the gases down there, if they can recycle them into electricity. Would we make that part of our energy portfolio? And the original way it was requested was, would BPU buy the power from it? And I said, well, why don't we buy something back that we turn around and give to you free? So.
Like a fair question.
So. Yeah, if it's the same project, I'm familiar with what they're trying to do down there, but that's been several years ago when we had that conversation, so.
Okay,
They did mention at the Public Works and Safety, Jeff Fisher was there. It was an update. It started in 2012. At that time, it was estimated it was going to cost like $4 million. And now today,
Right.
the new price is 100 million.
sure.
You know,
Yeah.
and so they explained, how the price went from 4 million to 100 million. And everybody just shook their head.
Feel like maybe we should have done it at 4. I don't know.
Well, I wanted to make sure we're talking the same project, so I didn't have the slide deck and I wasn't
Sure.
reading, but he came under a lot of heat from some of the commissioners too, to try and explain how that price increase go as high as it did, and then what happened to all the other money that, by the government had invested in that project, where did that go? So.
Yeah.
I do believe originally they had hoped to partner with Kansas City.
Miss-
This is Angela. I do think originally the unified government had hoped that Kansas City, Missouri would partner with them on that project and had proceeded down that path, and I don't think that worked out.
Thank you.
There was a report from Nancy Zilke with Alvarez and
Yep.
Marcel or whatever. Did a report. There was a slide presentation.
There was not.
There was,
Oh,
so we could probably get it. There's things I can.
okay.
I'll try to retrieve it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, David. Any other board reports? Jeff, Bob, do you guys have anything to report?
Nothing.
Nothing? Okay. I did meet with the pilot task force yesterday, and we actually had some really good discussion about, some of the recommendations that task force is going to try to bring forward. But I want the board to know, particularly in light of what we're talking about this evening, a couple of things that came out of that meeting. And obviously, nothing has been decided, but I did take some suggestions that have been made by board members here to that meeting and suggested to asked Commissioner Bynum if the unified government had ever looked at potentially collecting the pilot only, just the pilot, the same way that they collect our property taxes at 2 intervals in the year, because Mike Grimm had put together, and their finance folks had put together some information telling us that the average residential user on an annual basis, the pilot that is assessed to them is $225.60 on an annual basis. And so, they're talking about ways of trying to reduce it. We all understand what that burden is going to be. We'll all see that play out. And that is something that that Commissioner Bynum and Reggie Lindsay actually, certainly did not just say, no, that's not something we think we could do. Right. And I know that they don't have the authority to do it. But I did impress upon Commissioner Bynum our desire to have a full meeting between this full board and that full commission. And she obviously wholeheartedly agrees. And one of the other suggestions that I took that Senator Haley made, I think during our last meeting, was, potentially putting the unified government charges, having the unified government charges due at a separate point in the month. Take the pilot out, the pilot's being collected a separate way, right? It's no longer on the bill. And the unified government charges are separated out further and are due at a different point in the month. And potentially that there is a longer grace period for that. And I understand that that can be an absolute, and they acknowledged it as well, administrative nightmare for BPU. And so obviously nobody's going to move forward with anything, but those are things that we talked about, and they're thinking about. And I don't know that those will be recommendations that are being made, because our charge is really to look at the economics of this and to look at, if we reduce the pilot by X, what is this impact going to be to their budget, right? And I think we all know what that's going to be. But so anyway, those are some things we did talk about yesterday. Yes.
So if they do separate out this billing, we're still in charge now for a separate second billing?
Potentially. And I indicated that, this is, it would be costly to do it. And, we're going to need some help. So, and I think those are things that need to be discussed between full commission and full board, personally. I mean, I don't know how the rest of the board thinks, but, those decisions can't be made out of this task force or otherwise, right?
Well, I was struck, and just in listening to the meeting last week, of the number of commissioners who think that we should, publish size the pilot, and it should be in their, what do they call their quarterly newsletter that goes out. And I'm like, we've done that here so many times. That would seem repetitive to keep putting out what the pilot is and what, one more explanation in their paper. I was taken aback by the number of people thought of commissioners that thought, should be explained better, when we've been here trying to explain it better for a long time.
But
I would say, since it's their fee, they should be the one doing the explanation. And then let's not have to. I'd be kind of concerned about 2 billings a month and what the repercussions to a ratepayer would be if they don't pay their UG portion of the bill, their UG bill. And what I really, and I have spent no time doing any research on this, but I'm curious, is how do other cities handle their service charges for like trash, stormwater and things like that? How are other cities collecting the monies that are needed to operate their city from their residents? Is it, most of them, I don't think, are doing it through their utility.
Well, any
So,
municipal has some sort of charge like a pilot, and it's just that ours is more, it's
yeah.
like
Well,
twice
just
the
because, like,
average.
How does Independence bill their customers? Or how does the city of Independence bill their customers for things like those other services, should it be two
Separate
payments a
bills.
year to the UG for your taxes, basically property tax one time and services, fees and services a second.
This is Angela, and I don't, I think they do it in a variety of ways, but a lot of cities don't have as many because for example, trash is not provided through the city, and so they don't bill for that. A lot of cities don't have stormwater, so utilities, so they have less of those to deal with. Most do, some do have them, and I think that they provide for those in a variety of ways.
Well, I understand the idea behind the monthly billing so that if you charge them an annual fee, basically services and everything, say in an April, then they've paid up through the whole 12 months. And if they were to move, you would have to reimburse them for those differences. But I just, I still struggle to this day, and I've lived here my whole life, how a city can put charges on a utility bill and then turn off your power or water because you didn't pay for a service that's outside of this city. I'm talking trash. So that's just a contract they have with somebody else. So people could lose their electricity because they didn't pay for a third-party contract from the unified government. So,
Well, I think one of the positives is this conversation. And, we're hearing what our customers and our constituents say. And so having a conversation that's a plus.
I think
You're all-
if we could get a meeting with the commissioners, that would be huge. I mean, we've only done it once, right after I got elected. We had one, and we've never had one since. And we've been more than willing. We've invited them many times, especially during the AQS project.
Well, you got two different issues here. You got tax and you got service to the public. You got trash collection, standard. This time last year, it was $15 per household. As of November last year, it's $17. They made a decision without no input from nobody but themselves. The storm charges on the funding mandate by the government went up from $4.50 to $8 in November. No input from nobody but themselves. So now we got the wastewater, which is more than a pilot. Your average bill is about $25 a month. The pilot is around about $12. So trash collection, wastewater is more money on the bill than the pilot by itself. So now you're gonna be discriminated against. Well, we'll take the pilot. The pilot is nothing more than a tax. They ain't got nothing to do with trash, nothing to do with wastewater. It's a tax all by itself. So what we're trying to do is take that tax, one line item on the usual bill and take it away. The bill still has stormwater, wastewater, and trash. So the bill will not be reduced, but a little bit. And that's for the pilot. So what we trying to accomplish? What we're trying to do is make sure the utility bill is reduced from where it is. If you take everything off the bill, utility bill will automatically be reduced BPU, no doubt about it. It's a no-brainer. But you just pick out a little bit, it's not gonna help the ratepayers none whatsoever. You take it all, or do something different. No, you get piecemeal it all together. What's so important about that is the fact that they still have the position to have the pilot 5 to 50% like they want to. So is it a problem with the pilot being too high? Yes. Standard and Poor's, Fitch, and Moody's have said for 25 years. BCU, Kansas City, Kansas. Pilot is too excessive. Be no more than 7.5. Across America, it's at 5.5. We've been from 13 to 12 to 10, and we should have gone back down to 9.9 in 2009. They didn't do that. I got the document right here to show you that. So either do it right or just try to make it be reduced where it be affordable. Usually government needs that money for the pilot. Take care of other services in the city. I don't care how they get it, they need that money. So what we try to do is make sure the ratepayers will not be affected to the magnitude of the ONR. 11.9 is too expensive. And here, I have a copy here for you.
Thank you, Bob.
Yeah,
Senator Haley,
in 2000.
your hand's up.
Yeah.
Hang on one second,
I'm
Bob.
sorry. I'm sorry. Had Mr. Mylan, was he still, did he
He's
still have a
trying to
final
find
point?
a document. I didn't know if you had something real quick you could throw in.
Okay, I do. And it's what a healthy discussion. And I'm very, very encouraged and pleased to hear that each of us shares a certain concern or even umbrage over the cost that we as tax collectors are having to bear at the utility, which gives us a bad name. Not saying that our kilowatt or that our usage may not be above the average, it may be, but certainly as tax collectors, pilot, trash, et cetera, I'm glad to hear each of us around the table understand the public relations problem that our utility has. We can clear up a whole lot of things if we have two bills, and I don't know what the cost is going to be or how it's going to be borne or how we offset that, but I'm just grateful to hear around the table, this table, that we get it. And evidently we have to do something about it. So my question is, how do we bell the cat? I mean, we only have so much power because of the ordinance from the UG, but if we are the penalty, if we extract the penalty, if somebody is late with their taxes for a month on that second billing, is it automatically disconnected? Or what other carrot, what other stick do we have, because we can't pay everybody's bill who's late on the UG taxes. We can't afford to do that. But what other penalty or incentive can we put in place that gives a little breathing room on the high taxes that the UG imposes through us? And that's the question I hope we can turn to and try to resolve it, since we all seem to be of one mind that we're being overbilled as the tax collectors on behalf of the UG. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Bob, did you find your document?
Yeah, I have before me resolution 8309, dated 209. It says this, item 3. The subject percentage of gross revenue to be set over by the Board of Public Utilities, the United Government, is to use the government purpose shall be 11.9% for the fiscal year 2011 and 9.9% thereafter. Signed July 30, 2009. There it is, folks. So we've been paying 11.9 since 2009 for 14 years. So somebody wants a rebate. Been paying too much. So somebody got to do something with this document in my hand.
Hey, Bob, is it okay if Chris makes a copy for the rest of the board?
I'll be more than, I have more than that. too.
Hey, look at that.
Or she.
Chris is gonna make.
Chris is gonna make copies.
Appreciate you finding that document.
So I go back and I'm an old timer here, folks, but keep in mind, my mind's still pretty good. 209, what we did. Now here's what they did. Resolution 209 established by the pilot rate for the years 210, 212, 210, established 12.8%. January 2010, 211, rate 11.9%. January 1, 2011, rate 9.9%, effective January 1, 2012, and thereafter. So here's.
Bob Mylan coming with the receipts.
But then in 12, they bumped it back to 9 because they decided they couldn't do the 9.9.
So.
And it's been there. It's
So
been
what they
stuck.
did, they went to their own session and changed what they want to change it and then tell nobody about it. Sometime way, they owe us some money, so. figure it out for yourself.
Well, and hopefully, you know, we can obviously, and Bob, I know, Bill, you were able to speak to this to some extent. You were called on the fly at the meeting 2 Thursdays ago with the full commission. And obviously you did a great job on behalf of the BPU at that meeting.
Excellent.
And you know, and you didn't have that at your fingertips, but Bob had just talked about the night before, so that's good. But hopefully we can find a collaborative solution. You know, it's nice to have the receipts, right, with the full commission to come up with something that's more equitable in some way, shape or form.
Yeah,
I don't know if the mayor's aware of that. He probably should be.
well, you know, information was not fulfilled on the memo of understanding that it would go down to 9.9% in 2 years. They reneged on the commitment.
Right.
And so, Ms. Colombo was president then, Doug Grader was the general manager, Dennis Hayes was the EOC and all that, Mr. Lewis, was financial officer, all the good people was there. So we signed the agreement. However, it didn't take place. Mr. Walker was a counsel at that time. Lloyd was at that meeting. He's no Lloyd. You remember all this. So my point is, you gotta be honest with the public.
That's right.
And they were not honest with the public. People, you had nothing to do with this session at all. So we sat back and said, well, they go down 9.9 in 2 years. It didn't happen.
Right.
Got 2 years older. Found out that.
I'm not sure exactly, but I think it was 2011, Bob, when everybody met again. I was right when I first got on the board. We met over at Reardon Street.
I live all of.
And it was, at that time, they voted to set it at 11.9 again. So it had been at 9.9 and it was supposed to stay at 9.9. But at that meeting that we had, they changed it to 11.9.
I don't think they made down to 9.9. I think the year it was supposed to go to 9.9, they stopped at 11.9 because they felt that they needed the revenue. Did it get down to 9.9?
Well, no, it went down to 10.9.
Yeah, but then it went back up, then went back to 11. Yeah, I don't think we've been below roughly 11 since I've been on.
2014.
Yeah.
Well, and one thing, you know, in that meeting that Bill, you know, said in an extremely diplomatic fashion, was that, you know, people have looked at our residents and our customers have looked at the utility. The unified government has looked at the utility to try to streamline, become more efficient. And I think everyone and all the department heads in this room know, because you all have been through the pains of that and have been successful in doing that. I know the outside looking in doesn't always see it that way, but diplomatically invited the unified government perhaps to maybe go through the same type of internal assessment. Right, because we understand that the unified government budget is reliant on this money. And so it's a hard issue to try to solve. But our residents have been asking us for years to solve this issue. And we certainly have a mayor and I think commissioners that are committed to it. And I know that this board is committed to, you know, trying to solve, at least problem solve for our customer base as well.
Well, you know, if we reduce it any percent, it's gonna have an adverse effect on the UG's budget.
Understood.
Service. People, they need the money, folks, but don't penalize 65,000 BPU customers by themselves. Point blank.
Understood. Thank you, Bob. You know, one other thing that came up yesterday, a gentleman by the name of Thomas Gordon, who I believe spoke at our meeting, at the last meeting, And I believe Mr. Gordon is an advocate on behalf of seniors throughout the state. And I did not catch what organization he's involved with, but he's now joined that task force as well. And one of the things that he put forth was for seniors 65 and above who are at or below the income, the poverty income level set by the state. In addition to having continuous service with BPU for 10 years, that those residents pay only water and electric. And so that is something he put forth yesterday. And it's an interesting suggestion. I know we would like to give relief to seniors as well. But one of the things I didn't know is if we could even, and Mike did ask if it's something we would be able to potentially obtain, is whether or not we even have data that would take our, customer segment down to 65 and above, and maybe we can. I understand we don't have the income, right? And that's understandable. But the two other data points, 65 and above and 10 continuous years of service, I didn't know if that's something Jerry and his team can help maybe pull out of the data we have.
You,
Mike will be really happy to do that.
We may have some of the age, because something well like everything that's based on.
Sure.
I know there were a lot of complaints about trash. Some lady said she just had one little small bag of trash every week. And I know some municipalities do the 65 and over and give a reduced rate to seniors for trash because they're sometimes living alone or whatever. So, I mean, that's not, and we bill for it, but it's not our bill. So that might be another thing to look into.
No, and he did actually bring that up yesterday, that very thing. And certainly have an appreciation for it. I mean, that's just not the charge of the Catholics. Thank you very much, Chris.
you all realize the population is 55 years old. These senior citizens, the impact of the population that's too young. For that. To be bankrupt. So I did all that.
Hello?
Use age and income.
Hang on, David.
Okay.
So what's that?
Understood. No, and well taken, Bob. I do think that that's an issue that, obviously it's something that could not go into effect immediately. But just from a BPU perspective, though, that segment of customer base would still be fully liable for water and power.
So we check with lawyers and find out the population of the community. So,
Sure.
sounds good. I mean, we would never see that's all fine, but my point is, Kansas, being citizen is close to going close to 100 than zero.
That's right.
Well, and if you removed a fee such as trash, which is a contract price from a segment of the population, the total dollars that are spent on that contract will be divided by a smaller number. So everybody else's trash services are going to go up in cost.
No, I didn't mean to remove the whole, just a reduced rate is what this.
But I know, well, only if they could get a contract, because otherwise it's still the same way.
Right,
If it's $1 million contract, it's split between the number of people paying.
exactly.
Go ahead, David.
Yeah, and thanks for the discussion, roundtable discussion. Little postscript, Thomas Gordon, who was actually here in Topeka today in my office, is with the silver-haired legislature. And he's not just he's the state president for silver-haired legislature, which we rely on for policy and policy promulgation. And he and his group was here, the older Americans, those that have our advocacy groups like Area Agency on Aging and what have you. And BPU on this topic was one of their major points that they brought to my office and to that of Senator Petty as well, who represent the county. So there's a bill that I've introduced. It's Senate Bill 154 that would cap the amount of municipal charges, combined utility service charges, the 15% of the payment in lieu of taxes or other charges, basically the city fees, trash collection, whatever. The bill is going to be heard. It's not going to go anywhere. But I imagine for the purposes of discussion to show, and I welcome anybody, I should have copies of the bill, Senate Bill 154 for you, but it outlines all the duties of that which we have to collect. It does not specify how we are able to be the collector, but it would cap it. And it came about because we looked at what other utilities, I guess it goes back, I think is what Jeff was saying, how much do other people have to pay from other places for these particular services that the city is making us bill for, or that the city is billing through us. And on average, it was about total everything, groundwater, put everything together, taxes, was about 12%. I'm not talking about just the pilot. We're talking about everything. It was about 12% of the consumption-oriented bill for electric. I think water was a little higher, but anyway, it certainly is not 15%. So I just wanted to throw that out because, as you know, 11.9 pilot alone is, almost 12% or getting close to 12%. So anyway, just want to throw out Senate Bill 154, and I just appreciate the roundtable discussion.
Thank you, David. Do we have anything else on this particular topic before we move to our next one?
One comment, we
Yes.
have a lot of the data that we can send to the board. So if you want to know how other cities are billing for these services, we have that information.
Yeah, mostly just billing, not
Yeah.
charging, just billing.
Yeah. Where does those bills come from? How does the city, how does residents other, and then what they pay?
Well, and I suspect that, those combined bills look similar to what we have. Separate the pilot, right? I mean, we understand that it's different. You add them all up, they look the same. Our problem is everyone's having to pay all that one time. And if you don't pay it, you get your lights cut off, right? That's the issue.
That's the problem.
That's the problem. And I will tell you that
There's a heavy hand.
the commission is well aware of that. So,
Well, they've been aware of it
that's right.
from,
I'm not telling you that
Yeah.
they're well aware of
Yeah.
it, like they want to do anything about it.
no, yeah, okay. All
I'm
right.
telling you they're well
Okay.
aware.
They just know.
They know, they know.
Making a copy of this,
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
this read it home and digest it and pray the Lord that we can do something different.
Will do.
But that's gotta be a resolution. And all we gotta do is look around the country and see what's happening. Taxes and then utility. We're dealing with water, we're dealing with power. That's our main emphasis. Keep that in mind. We wear two hats here. We one of 20 utilities that do both of them. And we're probably in the top 50 of being the best in the country. So we're doing something right. Just make sure we do it right, because we're comparing utilities that do one thing. We do both things.
That's right.
It's important.
No, and I feel like when the staff does their comparisons, they are trying to compare to like-sized utilities that perform both functions. Okay, so let's move on to the next agenda item, the Board Community Advisory Group. We talked about this multiple times, and I feel like I have talked a lot about it. So I'd like to give other board members an opportunity to talk about it, address it, and potentially figure out a solution, to make this happen soon.
Well, I said before I ended my term as president, I wanted to get something going and get something started. And I met with Mr. Gorman, and he brought along a person from Groundwork NRG, I think is the name of that organization. And we had just a discussion, and a lot of things were just kind of thrown at me that day, and I just need some sort of input. I mean, I will continue to work on this, but I need some kind of input from the rest of you as where do we go from here? How do we really do this? Who gets to be represented? I mean, it can't be just like one certain group. I know all of us speak at one time or another at a neighborhood group. How do we,
Okay, what do you want them to do, number one?
Well, I think it has to start with like a conversation, basically, to let them know, let the people know we are listening to what, you know, we might not have a solution right now, just as we're talking, everything we just talked about.
We had it
is-
before, you know that, don't you?
We had what?
A committee from the community, get with the board. Back in the early 80s, just had that. So I can even retrieve the name of the person on the board from various communities. We've had that before. They came to various board and expressed what they had from their particular community. It wasn't NRC at that time that
Mhm.
exists. So you gotta define what you want them to do. And spell it out. And who's gonna be part of that board. It can be very
That's-
political, very selfish, very discriminatory, very biased, to name a few things.
I just want input. If I'm gonna carry this forward or if I'm gonna help with the organization, I need input like you just gave me.
Mary, do you think it would be helpful if the board formed a subcommittee or a committee of 3 board members, as we do with our other committees? And that's the designation from the board that meets with this advisory group from the public. Would that be helpful?
I think that would be helpful. I think we need some sort of outside moderator or outside facilitator or, you know, I don't think it can be BPU board and neighborhood group or whatever. I feel like there has to be some sort of bigger organization than that. I don't.
Jeff, I feel like you have some thoughts on this as well.
I'm still trying to picture how this would work. I think the reality is that it would probably require 2 committees. I think you'd have one committee that would be an internal board committee that would set the ground rules and processes for the engagement. And they would be the ones who would solicit to find the interested groups and representative, you know, I mean, the representatives, we can just, it'd be a contact. So basically, it's just step by step by step. You find the groups that have the interest to meet with the BPU for whatever reason they are. I mean, it shouldn't be limited on the reasoning. And then you have to determine, well, who's going to be their spokesman for that group. Because then your second committee would be the one that would meet with those spokesmen. And I don't know that. My fear would be if you try to bring too many of them in at one time, there won't be enough time. Everybody wants to be highlighted. So you may even have to do it in like, hey, we're going to have 1 hour work session, or, you know, it would be a committee meeting, and we're going to block off 4 12-minute intervals for each one. And then those extra minutes you have are used at the beginning and open and close a meeting. But then you give each one of those groups 12 minutes and you have a discussion and they present, you know, you have a presentation basically says, this is what we're looking for. The follow-up is not going to be in those committee meetings. The follow-up would have to probably
That's
be
the
done.
full confusion. All that is.
Well, I'm just saying, if you want to look, and I don't know that you necessarily have more than 4 groups. If you only have 2 or 3, then there's half an hour each almost that they can have. And basically since we haven't done anything like this, you're having to initiate a conversation that hasn't been
Well, you
happening.
know, we have an ethics commission. What we did, we for the public to apply to be part of the BPU ethics commission.
Mhm.
They applied for that. That process goes well. If you want to have an advisory board, ask the public. You'd like to serve an advisory board to represent BPU. Don't care where you live at. Apply for it. Take that application, apply for it, look at those and select from that group.
And, but how does that group represent the voices from certain segments of our customer base?
Apply. Okay,
Yeah, but I don't know that that's, I mean, maybe there's an application form or something like that to bring those groups in.
Got three boards. Got three lists with three boards. So that's 6 people right there.
See, that's why I brought this.
No, that's
I
fine.
wanted to talk about this tonight because like, okay, and who's involved from staff? I mean, we can't.
I
just
think
be
that's
up
why you
here.
have to have that first committee, because you have to lay out the groundwork. You got to figure out, what are we trying to accomplish? That's the first thing. What do we want to accomplish?
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Listening for one thing. I mean,
But
that's what
is
we've
the
been
end
doing,
goal?
but we need to carry that a little bit
Potentially
further.
identifying best practices
Or better practices.
or best practices amongst utilities that do what we do.
But some of the
Ours
groups,
isn't the only way of doing it.
yeah, some of the groups aren't necessarily advocating for that. So that's why I say you have to be able to leave it open that any group can at least have their moment to be heard. Now, there are going to be people that come with wants and needs. Wants, needs are things that we have to accomplish. We have to do our maintenance. We have to, keep everything up. There's a certain list that every year that we have to do. If you fall behind, it just costs you more in the future. But wants are more limited. Wants are things that are above and beyond what we're doing today. We just have to figure out which one of those are appropriate. And in a lot of the cases, we're gonna have to figure out, is it cost effective to do some of these wants? Because anything that the cost increases is shared as a burden by all ratepayers. And we want to keep it fair to everybody else.
Tom, did you have any thoughts on this?
I got so many thoughts.
Please share.
Please share.
Please share.
I'm taking it all in
Okay,
and processing it.
that's fair.
Yeah, well, I just need help to move forward because I don't know where to go from here. And I said I would do this and
I would like to suggest that the board form another committee outside of the committees that we have now. And their purpose is to engage with the community advisory group. And we got a lot of work to do on to Jeff's point on how to get there. But that would be my suggestion. I don't feel like, Mary, you should be on an island on this, or any other board member should be on an island on this.
Madam President, I would volunteer to be on that committee.
As would I, Mr. Bryan. Thank you.
There you got it.
I mean, I think that, I don't think it'll take a lot of meetings to come down with the ground rules, but we just need to have them in place before we start, because they can always be altered later.
okay.
Would you like to also be on?
Then I would, yeah, if I can have some help, I'll
No.
stick with it. Okay.
And here's something that I would request, and I think that we're like-minded on this, Madam President, is that when we set up committees this year, and we have chairs for those committees, and the chair does not hold any more vote than anybody else on the committee, but the chair's just the person who's responsible to make sure the meetings happen. Because otherwise, committee meetings just seem to, I know part of it was COVID, but they seem to disappear.
Well, for example, like the audit committee,
I think that was COVID thing that,
well, they used to report and then all of last year,
we never had an audit. Yeah,
I mean, I formed an audit committee, but
we never. had
the
any meetings.
auditing group never really ever contacted me or gave me they did this not too long ago, but so sometimes it's out of the chair's hand.
Yeah, well, yeah, I understand, but at least try.
Right.
They sent me a letter saying that completed, they found no discrepancies from errors, so they performed their duty. But let's back up a little bit. If we're going to involve the community, that's community. Now, this Goldman guy got 10 pages here. He claimed all these people here signed a petition against BPU. Almost 300 people. That's page 1, page 2.
Okay, And
16 pages all this here. And these people tell me they have not signed no petition at all. It's page 2 to 16, page after page. So.
Yeah, I think what that is, Bob, I think that they attended some sort of meeting where Mr. Gorman spoke
I don't believe.
and they just signed.
I don't believe it.
Well,
It's all that people have not been at no common meeting. It goes there all to place so. A whole bunch of names here, folks. That
Well,
makes sense.
I would say that even if something came before the board, you know, from somebody who's gone through an engagement committee, at the end of the day, we still have to decide economically whether it's feasible. So all it is basically a conduit to get, you know, questions, concerns into this room. That's what this is.
You know, if nothing else has happened, I think there are more people that understand the pilot
Yeah.
at the UG than ever before. If nothing else, that has, I mean, I think that information is helpful.
You can never over communicate.
I totally agree.
And it's just finding ways to do it. You know, I'm glad to see that even though there's only 5, we have 5 attendees online,
Right.
which, you know, how many meetings did we go through in the past where we didn't have 5 attendees in the audience?
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
Well, and Jeff, you just said it, we can't over communicate enough. That's, you know, that's another charge that, you know, the board through its strategic planning, you know, one of the other things is we want to be better with that, right?
Exactly.
And I think one of the ways we can get better is to engage more with the community. And do it in a more systematic fashion, other than leaving folks to the only way they feel like they can bring something to this board is to either call or email one of us, you know, separately, or show up in our boardroom every first and third Wednesday, you know, and give them 5 minutes, and that's all the time they ever get. And, you know, I mean, we all live here, and, you know, I've seen things that happen here and across, you know, on 7th Street that as a community member, I want to go and have a say in too. I don't because lazy, but, you know, but I mean, but you want to have the input, right? And I think that it's important for this board in our effort to communicate more effectively to do just this.
yeah, I think, you know, I hope for community engagement to the point that we're able to sculpt the board presentations from staff on topics that, you know, hey, we're getting a lot of questions about this right here. Can you guys work up a presentation so that everybody, you know, and Dave can advertise it when he's putting out his promo about, you know, a board meeting, and say there will be a presentation on, you know, energy efficiency or whatever it is, you know, and attend, and maybe it'll turn from being, you know, 5 people that are come because they're still wondering what we do to 50 people coming because, hey, they're going to show us how this works, you know, and things like, and like I said, the more you engage with your communication with the residents and everything, you kind of move the veil, you take away the shadows and mist, and people are looking at it and say, you know what, they're just coming together and trying to run the utility the best they can to make sure we have what we need at the best price we can get. And it takes away that mystique, and people, you know, get a better appreciation for what a municipal utility is.
Well, and before we leave this issue and adjourn this meeting, Bill, I wanted to give you an opportunity if you have any thoughts on this, Dad, as well.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
No, I think it's good. I think, I would offer up this, if you're gonna form a committee, which I think it's not a bad idea. I think it could be a good idea, depending on what the outcome actually produces, right? There are municipal utilities that have community advisory boards. Take a look at that and try to determine why those, not boards, but some boards, why those groups exist to begin with. What the purpose of founding, some type of advisory committee or that's separate from the board that oversees the utility. What does both want to achieve? So I would just answer those what, whys, hows, and all of those type questions. Make sure that it's buttoned up. But they can run amok if you're not careful, okay? And then I think, we'll produce something, I don't know that I will agree that best practices would come from people that don't really know utilities, but it'll be interesting to have that conversation to see kind of where they are and see what we can do as management to help educate them on where we can close that gap between what they think is best practices and what utility experts say really are best practices. I think that's a conversation worth having.
Well, and I think that we have the ability to, if we hear something
Right.
as best practice, we can come back to you all and say, hey, are there other munis that do this kind of thing, right?
Right, yes.
How effective is it?
I agree.
Wichita, all the same thing. It's called utility rate board. It's called Kansas had for 100 years down there. Same principle.
Right.
Take how Wichita on that.
Right.
They're bigger than Kansas City, Kansas. Utility rate board, Wichita. They have it for 100 years.
Yeah.
Same principle involve the community. And American Public Power also, I think, recommend utility should have a community advisory board in some capacity. And they call it the rate board in Wichita, has one.
The only other comment I have is, when you're talking about a meeting, one or two committees that you guys are working together on. You guys will also be talking in the community separate from one another. And my caution or my recommendation is speak with one voice while you're out there, because that'll come back and present problems for us that we all have to deal with. If there are one, and there's one board member saying that, and we talked kind of about this out at the community college. Right. It's good to be engaged, carry one message out there, and as far as that goes. Same thing with the management team in the room. We can't be sending mixed messages to the community. So very important.
I don't see it as separate, us going out separate. That I don't see it as that.
Neighborhood meeting
For
here.
neighborhoods,
But-
yes, yeah.
But I don't, in having the community engage with us, it doesn't remove us from our responsibility, members, to make the decisions. All it does is augments our education about what our community needs.
Right.
Or what we see in our community as needs, because, I look at this and even if there's 300 people, you have to weigh what the cost would be to institute one of those policies. And 300 is how much of our ratepayers, so then you have to understand is, everything just comes down to balancing it out and at the end of the day, doing everything you can to make the community, make it as good for our community as we can with the dollars that we have.
And your elected officials.
Right.
Madam President.
Yeah.
To adjourn.
Yeah.
Go into our next meeting.
I've got a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Again,
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Roll call Gonzalez,
I.
Groneman,
Aye.
Haley,
Aye.
Mylan, Mulvaney Henry,
Aye.
Bryant.
Aye.
That motion carries.
Thank you, Tom, for keeping.
Okay, I thought you meant, I was mixed up, Bill. I thought you meant that